salute you. Okay, good morning, and this is the Get Busy Livin podcast with the wonderful Daniel G. Taylor. And thank you so much, Daniel, for coming on and giving some gold nuggets this morning. And we appreciate your time. We know how busy you are. So, yeah, thanks again. Thanks for doing this podcast with me.
Yeah, no, thank you very much for having me, Scott. Greatly appreciate the opportunity to jump on here with you and have a chat.
All right, Daniel, I'll call you Daniel. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's okay.
Not Dan, Daniel. So, Daniel, I'll start off with the first question. So, tell us, Daniel, what gets you out of bed every morning, please?
So one of my mentors, Dr. John DiMartini, who I imagine that some of a lot of people on your podcast will probably know, says that if you don't have a reason to live, you have a reason to die. And after spending over 2 years homeless, I came out of that with a with a goal to do something toward ending homelessness. And yeah, and so that's working toward my goal of ending homelessness is what gets me out of bed every morning. And at any one time, I'm working toward that goal at multiple different time frames. So I have like a short-term project or a short-term goal. I have like a medium term, a long term. I have a big, hairy, audacious goal. And then I have what I call a sage goal, which is to ensure the work which I start in my lifetime will continue beyond my lifetime. And so at any one time, I'm taking steps toward all those different time frames to make that happen. And I figure if Elon Musk can take us to Mars, then I can at least get us into homes on this planet.
I think yours is a little bit more important. I think than Elon's goal of getting to Mars. Was it? You can
Yeah.
get to Mars if you want. Apparently it's pretty hot there, so you can have it. So yeah, I appreciate that. That's a huge commitment to the community, and I get it. I've lived in areas where a lot of people are impoverished, and yeah, it's not cool. And I mean, even for myself, our family, we're not what you call middle class. They were more poor as such. I'll give you a perfect example. I had to wear my brother's uniforms. I had to wear the hand-me-downs. I must admit, we did eat well. We didn't. Well, in those days, there was no such thing as takeaway.
Yeah.
The only takeaway was, fish and chips, and that was pretty much the special on a Friday night. But otherwise,
I knew you were going to say on the Friday night.
Yeah, the special on Friday night. Mum used to say, "Give me a reprieve. I want a reprieve on a Friday night." So, but when we wanted something, we always got the no answer. So yeah, I get it. There's a lot of, but at least I had a roof over my head. At least,
yeah.
At least we had 3 square meals, and at least we had a roof over our heads. And I had, I have done it in voluntary. Voluntary. I have lived on the streets voluntarily for short stints, but that's just to experience what it's like, and it's not cool.
Yeah.
And yeah, so that's a great initiative that you've and a great goal. That's and I love how you call it a sage goal. Greater than greater than heaven. That's out of Monkey, the great sage. And yeah, that's a legacy that I wished I had as well, to get everyone out of poverty and have a roof over their heads and 3 meals a day at least.
Yeah.
So, so tell us. That leads to my second question. So tell us, Daniel, how did you get into that? How did you get into helping people get off the streets and into?
Yeah. So look, it was, yeah. So everything. I've just brought together and built on everything which I've ever done, and just continually refined what I'm doing. So the particular focus on the homelessness stuff came out of my time being homeless, and I've so I so yeah, jumping back like 15 years or so, I got a phone call from my sister, and I was living here in Adelaide where I am now, and my sister's said, oh, I just lost you. Oh, I just lost Scott. I'm sure Scott will be back. It says I'm still alive, so I'll keep going. So I yeah, I my grandma called, and sorry, my sister called to say that my grandma had a skin cancer and she needed someone to come over and look after her, support her through recovering from the skin cancer. So I went over and did that. It was supposed to be a short-term stint, and then, hey Scott, you're back.
Sorry, mate. My
As
wife.
I carried on without you because I saw I was still lost. So
well done. Carry on.
Yeah.
Carry on. Carry on, Daniel.
just take over your podcast for you. So,
don't carry on, but carry on.
yeah. So I was just saying that I moved back to Melbourne because my grandma had a skin cancer, and she needed someone to support her through that. And so I looked after her with that and got her through a skin cancer operation and a recovery. But it became obvious that she needed more, needed more support than you could get, like than you just that temporary support. She needed someone there full time, and it turned out that she had mild cognitive impairment, which is a form of dementia, and it makes it sound the mild part makes it sound like it's less severe than it actually is. It was actually quite, it got quite bad. But she needed someone looking after her full time, and I was in the position where I was able to do that because as a writer, I had that freedom. I'd actually just been offered a job as a literary coordinator for a festival here in Adelaide, and but I turned that down to go back because, jumping back even further, when I was 13, I moved in with my grandma. I left my parent, my dad and my stepmom and two half brothers in the Northern Territory. I'd had a particularly challenging childhood, which then leads back into, so when grandma moved into the nursing home, after about 2 years, grandma needed round the clock nursing care, and so she needed to move into aged care facility. And when that happened, one of our relatives, who, let me put this way, was as friendly toward me as a Catholic priest is known to be. When I,
what are you trying to indicate?
didn't appreciate that I'd gone to the police, about that, and because he had grandma's financial power of attorney, he evicted me from grandma's place, and so and then it was just like a lemony snicket, a series of unfortunate events where I just could not find anywhere stable to live initially, and then it just sort of deteriorated from there. And living with bipolar disorder as well, not having that stability, not knowing where I'm going to be. Originally it was like a month to month kind of thing. I don't know where I'm going to be in a month, but then it became daily. It was like I don't know where I'm going to be sleeping tonight. I don't know where I'm going to be eating today. I don't know what I'm going to be doing. And so yeah, and as it got worse, so bipolar is a circadian rhythm disorder, as my friend Dr. Stephen Jasper says he's a jet lag guy, and he says a circadian rhythm disorder, and so when your sleep is disrupted, managing with bipolar, managing anything else becomes incredibly challenging, and trying to find a way out of being homeless, uh, while dealing with that and not being able to keep up your medication, and not having that stability, and a constant threat of violence and uncertainty is quite distressing, to understate things.
Um. So yeah, that what was I going to say? Couldn't get the support that you needed at the time, and the the person who was committing the abuse was basically the one that was kicking you out. So that's commendable that you had the understanding that I need to get out of this environment, and whether it be on the streets or not, I don't care. This is not the right way to live, and that the alternative is to live on the street, and that's pretty ballsy, Daniel. That's because a lot of people just um, live with the abuse and would rather be in that abusive environment than go because they don't know anything else. So that's commendable, brother. That's magic. So um, so you were on the streets. What area were you in? Where did this happen?
So
Was it
Melbourne and Geelong.
Melbourne? Okay, in
Yeah,
Geelong. Okay, and
yeah. I
um,
ended up. Sorry, I was going to say I ended up in Geelong. The good thing about Geelong at the time, I don't know whether this is still the case, but at the time, um, you were able to get 3 meals a day, pretty much every day of the week, from places that did, they did free food for people who are homeless and in poverty and stuff like that. And so there were, yeah, and because Geelong CBD is such a small area, they're all within a reasonable walk of each other and stuff. So there plenty of food, and a lot of people, and I'd like to address this because particularly in Australia, and particularly in the bigger cities, um, food is not the thing that people who are homeless really need. I had someone else who was homeless in Melbourne at the same time. He said to me, "I have never eaten as well as I have been since I've been homeless, because because there are just so many you know people and services, churches and things that come around, and they're providing food and giving out food and everything like that. The big need, which I found at the time, were three things, which was shoes and socks and women's hygiene products, because obviously all those three things are perishable. And if you're, I'll stick with the two I know, the shoes and socks. I'll leave the women's hygiene thing to the women, but when you're on the streets, you wear through shoes a lot. You wear through them, but you're also, if you have any shoes that are remotely half decent, you're at risk of having them stolen.
yeah, I was thinking that. I was thinking because that happened to me. People approached me and they wanted to, and I just put up a little bit of a front to them. So um, so I understand what you're saying. That, like you said, if they're any good quality, then someone else wants them. So
Yeah,
because there's no rules on the street. There's
yeah.
no law on the
Well,
street.
I had a like a couple of guys try and rob me for my shoes one night in the park, and I'm blessed that I have size 13 feet, because
Flip
because
flops.
yeah,
Yeah,
because
Ronald McDonald shoes.
he took my shoes off and tried them on, and he's like, "What size are your feet? These are far too big." Well,
Yeah, pretty
go
big,
and go
huh?
and rob someone with smaller sized feet. I can't help you there. Yeah, yeah, but so that was the only reason I didn't have my shoes stolen that particular night, is because my shoes were just so big.
sometimes it's better to have abnormal anatomy to live on the streets. But that's imperative. I know we're laughing about it, but that's imperative. Those little things can save your life. Can save a lot of heartache.
Yeah,
Save a lot of because then you got to go and find other shoes, and then you got to rely on those services again to try and get some shoes off them.
yeah.
So you did that. So I can't understand why you left Darwin. It's a wonderful place.
Left Darwin.
I'm being facetious. Yeah,
Ah,
being
yeah, yeah.
facetious. I'm being facetious. It's not a bad little town. It's just so freaking hot. But yeah, you went to the other end of the continent, so it would have
No,
been a
I
bit
left
of a.
Adelaide. I was living in Adelaide, and then I
Oh, it's
moved.
Adelaide.
Oh,
Oh,
yeah,
sorry, Adelaide.
yeah. That's where
Sorry,
I was
Adelaide. I
confused.
apologize.
I did live in Palmerston. Well, when I was a little kid, I lived in Northern Territory for 7 years. I was in Gove, which is also known as Nhulunbuy, which is, the way I put it is, it was a white settlement in the middle of Arnhem Land. The only reason it was there is because uh, it had bauxite mines. Bauxite gets turned into aluminium or aluminum for the Americans, and so white people saw money, so they didn't care that it was in Arnhem Land. They came and they mined it empty, which it is now, and now they've just left the town. It's got nothing to
Nothing
offer.
there.
Economically, it's gone from being rich because of the bauxite to nothing. But then I was living in Palmerston, which is just outside Darwin, and then I spent the last couple of months in the Northern Territory living in Tennant Creek. And
You there?
yeah, I'm here. I'm here. You're frozen on my end, but I don't know whether I'm frozen.
No, I can hear you. You can hear me now.
I can hear you okay. You're not moving, but I can hear you.
Okay. Wi-Fi problems today. All right. So okay. So you went from Adelaide to Geelong. Okay. And you did that for 2 years. So you lived on the streets for 2 years. And so
Yeah,
tell us
yeah, yeah.
about that. How did you go back into housing? How did you get back into um,
So
well
yeah, and I'll
paying taxes? Because
uh,
that's what happens. You start paying tax again.
yeah. Well, I yeah, I'll I'm always be completely open about these things. I think that if you're not, then it's there. But until I was homeless, I'd never done recreational drugs. It had never appealed to me. But while I was homeless, I started to I followed. I had like the teenage rebellious phase. I just happened to do it when I was in my late 30s, rather than rather than as a teenager. I started off smoking pot and then got into other things as well. And so I really reached a low point, there, and having bipolar disorder and doing recreational drugs is really not
Yeah, not a
a
good mix.
not
Not
a
a good
good
mix.
mix, not a good mix and stuff. So anything that affects your sleep with bipolar is not a good mix. Um, and so in 2018, I had a drug induced psychotic episode. So from the drug use, I had a psychotic episode. It wasn't it wasn't a manic episode like from the bipolar. It was related to the drug use. Um, but the
Yep.
way the yeah, and so I went into the psych ward at the Alfred Hospital in Melbourne. But the way the Australian psychiatric system treats people these days is it's really much a factory type situation where they're like, let's pump you through the psychiatric system as quickly as we can so we can get you out of here, because there's so much demand for psychiatric, for mental health beds, that they want to pump you through as quickly as they can. So they switched my diagnosis from bipolar disorder to schizoaffective disorder. So that meant they could then treat me with a depot, use
Mhm.
drugs for schizophrenia to treat me, rather than sticking to the bipolar drugs, which aren't as powerful. And um, uh, but the and they do this a lot. I've spoken to a lot of people who have had this schizoaffective disorder diagnosis, and the remarkable thing about it is if you follow the DSM-5 criteria to diagnose someone with schizoaffective disorder, they need to fully present with all of the symptoms for a bipolar disorder diagnosis and all of the symptoms for a schizophrenia diagnosis, and fully meet the criteria for both simultaneously. And which is very, very hard to do because some of these symptoms contradict each other. And so, so it really is a bit of a nonsense that that so many people get diagnosed with schizoaffective disorder. And to me, it seems quite clear that the only reason they're doing it is so they can, switch up the medication that they're using people to pump them through and get them out of the system much faster. That was just me going on my little side rant, but I am answering your question about how I got to the homelessness. So when when I was coming out of hospital, I went into a short term, post like a transition house for people who have been in a psychiatric ward, and started off going. I was there for about 6 weeks, and then I found a rooming house, which is like a rooming house is like a big house that has a ton of rooms. They rent out the rooms individually, so each person has their own room with a lock on the door, but it's all it's one house. You share a kitchen. There's there were a couple of bathrooms in it, and so I moved in there for a little bit, and that was that. I carried on without you again.
No, I heard you. I could hear you. I just
Okay,
I could hear
yeah,
you.
yeah. Okay, great. Well, yeah. So I moved into from the rooming house. Yeah, and I was really not having a good time in the rooming house. But I started spending a lot of time sleeping on my best friend's couch, and he was living in the house commission flats in Richmond in Melbourne, and so I was sleeping on his couch. It was him and his son living there, and I was sleeping on their couch because they it was housing commission, so they had the two rooms, a room for each of them, but not a spare room. But he had like a really big leather couch, um, and you know, it, he made it really clear that he never wanted me to sleep on the streets again. And so he's like, you can move in, and then his son ended up moving out into his own place, and I moved into I took over his son's room, and and then because I've got myself clean, like I was never I was never addicted to drugs. I was doing the drugs because of the circumstances, and also with bipolar, there's a hypersexuality, it goes, it is actually one of the diagnostic criteria that's requirement for bipolar. And I for me, the drugs was linked to sex. Sex and the drugs went hand in hand. So I was never actually addicted to the drugs themselves, and so it was very easy just to give up the drugs. But my best friend he had a similarly challenging childhood growing up, and he was addicted. He'd gotten addicted to heroin, and did pot and stuff. And but I worked to help him get clean. I was supporting him in getting clean and everything like that. And as a result, his we were given support by one of his family members who moved us into an apartment in the city. And then COVID happened. And then while we're during COVID, we moved into another apartment, and we lived there together. And we were living together up until the end of 2023 when he died. He died at the end of 2023, and then I moved back here to Adelaide.
May I ask, was it from an overdose?
Well, that's what we all thought, and it was quite a reasonable assumption to think so, but it actually wasn't. He had an underlying heart condition, and rather uselessly, they only tend to really be able to diagnose the heart condition that he had once you're dead. At which point, I figure you don't really need the diagnosis anymore. But it turned out that it wasn't an overdose. It was, it was this underlying heart condition and stuff. And in the last sort of 12 months or so before he died, I'd found him a number of times where he was blue. And I'd had to get the ambulance, and they had to come and resuscitate him and stuff. And sometimes he had drug paraphernalia with him, and other times he didn't. And but obviously, the amount which he used, it's not a surprise that he sometimes had drug paraphernalia with him, even when that wasn't what was causing the problem. But it really had gotten to the point where, for him, where not long before he died, he said to me, and this is not what I did, by the way, but just to be clear, but he did say to me not long before he died, he said, if I found him like that again, he didn't want me to call an ambulance. But that's not actually what happened. I was actually reading, I'd spoken to him the night before when I was going to sleep. I was just like good night, mate, kind of thing. And I heard him talking on the phone after that, because our bedrooms were next to each other. I woke up in the morning. I was reading. I read for at least 3 hours a day most days. I was doing my reading, and then it got to after midday, and he never gets up that late. Usually at some point he said something to me by this point, and his door was ajar, and so I was looking on him, and he looked like he was just asleep. But once it got after midday, I thought I'd better go in and check on him, and he was stiff, he was dead, and then I'm like, I actually don't know what to do. It's like I rang my other best friend who's here in Adelaide. I'm like, who do I call? Right? He's dead. He doesn't need an ambulance. He's not going to get any deader. So, who do I call? And he's like, well, call 000. And if that's not who you call, they'll tell you the right people to call. And I spoke to I called the 000. I spoke to the operator, and she was great. She's like, well, the first thing we have to do is make sure that he's dead. And but she organized the ambulance and the police and everything to come, because of course from for someone who's the same age as me, so he was what 40. He just turned 40. He just turned 48, I think, when he died. And for when it's someone that young, the police don't know what situation they're walking into. For as far as the police knew, I'd killed him. They honestly don't know what they're walking into. So the police come along and they take they take their statements and stuff, and then there's all the coordinating with the family, with his family and stuff like that, and so that was the end of 2023. So it was a fairly in time.
Yeah, I get it. I've got a friend. Her father passed away, and it was like an inquest.
Yeah,
because he passed away naturally. He had a heart condition. Same thing. He had throat cancer as well, and he passed away. And he used to live in a caravan at the back. And of course, they thought, they always think the worst. They all presume that whoever lives in the house, they must have done it. But it comes back to the coroner's report. The coroner will basically say, "No, this is natural."
Well, look, I was hoping, because given the number of times I was finding him blue, I was expecting that at some point he was going to die rather than later. I was just hoping that it would be me who found him and not his son, because his son had lost his mum about 10 years beforehand, and if he'd found his dad as well, that would have been like really, really hard to deal with. It wasn't easy for him to deal with it in any way, but James, his son, is like me, using humor to like one of the ways I've always used to overcome tough times is using humor. And can I tell a really wildly inappropriate joke that I was telling within 24 hours of Alistair dying?
You're getting in before me, so yeah, go ahead.
Okay, well, I'll get you before you. There we go. Well, so I mentioned that the operator said that I had to go in and make sure that he was actually dead. And so I went back into Alice's room and I went to his bedside drawer and I took out his gun and I shot him 3 times in the head and I said, okay, that's done. What do I do next?
Is that what you said to him?
So? No. It's a joke. It's a joke.
It's a joke.
I'm not confessing.
If you want to bring an inquest, that'd be the best thing to say to emergency services. Yeah, I put 3 bullets in him. I think he's dead.
No,
pretty sure he's dead.
Yeah. No, I actually I adopted a internet joke. If you Google it, it's actually like meant to be the funniest joke in the world. I just adopted it for the circumstances of Alice dying. In the original version, it is these 2 hunters are out hunting, and one of them dies, and he calls 911, and it's the same thing. The operator says, well, you have to make sure he's dead. So next thing, the operator hears a couple of gunshots and he's like, okay, I've done that, what next? So I just stole the joke. I wasn't quite in the resourceful headspace to be coming up with original material at that time.
Well, if you want the cops at your door in 5 seconds, that's a pretty good way of bringing them to your door pretty quickly. Yeah, I suppose it would be. So when did you get out of poverty? At what age were you?
Well, I mean, I'm still working my way out of it.
Yeah.
Actually, I mean,
are we all? Are we all, brother? We all are.
Yeah. No, it's like I have,
because you got a business now, yeah.
I have a business. Yeah, I have an NDIS marketing agency. We've got a small team. We've got 3. I've got 3 team members on the team. I've got a content marketing specialist, an email market, like she's a content marketing and email marketing specialist. I've also got a marketing assistant who lives here in Adelaide, and I've also got a like a web developer slash SEO person.
Yep.
Yeah, and yeah, on the team and stuff like that. But it's, you know, a core part of that is about overcoming the, you know, so this is something, yeah, going back to Elon Musk here, I'll connect some dots. But one thing that they recommend is that when you're hiring team members, you hire to compensate for your weaknesses. And Elon Musk does this brilliantly. I was on a web, like I was on a call with the president of SpaceX, and obviously Elon Musk is a visionary. He's quite, you know, up there in the air a lot. She is, you know, his president. She is so, I can't remember her name, but she is so incredibly grounded and down to earth. Um, you know, she's very much the practical, grounded, you know, let's make this happen kind of person. This is how this is how we'll go about making this happen. She's worked for Musk for a very long time. She's such a counterbalance for him and his sort of extreme sort of, you know, high end visionary stuff. She's so well grounded. And you know, and the thing is, she doesn't, like, she wants, you know, Musk's different missions to succeed, but she's not interested in getting any glory for them herself. She just wants to make them happen for the satisfaction of making them happen. If she she doesn't want it, she doesn't want or need any recognition as a result of it. That's not what drives her. And so I've tried, you know, with the bipolar disorder and to compensate for my own weaknesses, you know, I've hired people who balance that out. I've hired people who you get things done on time, you know, like on time every time. And so, yeah, so those things where I can be a little bit slack. I did have, you know, because like almost 32 years ago, I started out as a freelance writer, and I still do that today. I have the freelance article writing as a side hustle. I've got my own copywriting clients, but this came out. I'll find it there. See, this came out just last week, and so yeah, for me, a massive reader, I got paid to write about the 9 bookshops, secondhand bookshops in Adelaide CBD, and so. Yeah, and I'm still doing it. This is the first time I've had an article in a print publication in quite a while. Usually everything's online these days. So you know, I'd forgotten how much fun it is to see my name in print. I do love seeing my name in print, like actually in print, going into
So how did you stumble into that one? How did you stumble into content writing?
Well, so that goes back to when I was a teenager. When I finished high school when I finished high school, and I honestly didn't know what happened after that. Like, I'm like, what do I do next? I'd applied for uni, but nobody in my immediate family had been to uni, and no one from my school. So I finished high school in the 90s, early 90s. No one in my high school had made it into uni since the 80s, to the point where I had throughout my years in high school, I had teachers telling me, you've got potential to go to uni, but you're not going to be able to get there from this school. If you want to go to uni, you're going to have to change schools. And, you know, the way I got through high school, there's no way that, you know, you could do it this way these days. Like, um, with one of our with one so we Alistair, my high school best friend who died. We had one of our we were the only two who were serious about studying, and so we would go in once a week and see one of our teachers, and he would give us our work for the week, and then we would go home and do the work. But then we had another teacher, and Mr. Rule, his name was, and yeah, he would have us come to his house, and we would have like we would have study sessions and stuff like that with him. We just spend like the entire day studying with him, and he would just support us and stuff like that. And there is no way today that a school would would let a couple of minors go to a teacher's house and
Oh, no way.
we work with. I actually saw in the news just yesterday that a group of high school students went to their teacher's place. The teacher didn't know they were coming, but they went to cook breakfast for him to thank him. And there was all this big drama about the fact that this group of students had gone to this teacher's house to do it. And there's no way in today's world that that they'd be able to do that. But that's how Alistair and I got through high school. Alistair finished high school. I finished high school. I did get into uni, but there was this gap. This is coming back to answering your question, where after finishing high school and then having months off before, like months before I even find out whether I got into uni, I'm like, well, what do I do? I'd always wanted to do something that I'd been doing all my life, and I'm like, I don't really know. But I'd always been a writer. I'd always been a reader and a writer. Because of my challenging childhood, I had always read a lot. Your reading was initially about escaping the challenging circumstances of reality, and I got into writing because as a kid, my dad was a cop and my stepmom was a Girl Guide leader. And so dad would frequently be working, and I would have to go with my stepmom to Girl Guides meetings. And because I am not a girl, I had to occupy myself. I wasn't allowed, even though I was only 6-7 years old, I wasn't allowed to participate in the activities with the girls. So I had to amuse myself. There's no internet. This is like in a community hall, so there's no TVs, there's no internet, there's nothing. So I used to write stories. I that's how I got into writing. As I started writing, my first thing I ever wrote was a short story about a superpowered robin, as in the bird, not as in Batman and Robin, but as in
Okay.
superpowered bird was my first. And
Mm.
I used to write these things, and my stepmom was my first editor. She, after the meeting, she would take what I'd written and she would make editorial corrections and give me feedback on it. And it's still one of the things I love most about working with editors is I love getting feedback and hearing their opinion because it improves. But that's how I got into writing. And then so I started writing. I'm like, well, I'll become a freelance writer, right? And because that's how I thought. I'll become a freelance journalist because I thought that's how you make money as a writer. It's not, by the way. It never has been. There's so little money to even back when I started, there was, and it was much better then. There was still not heaps of money to be made as a freelance journalist. But I did that for a couple of years, and then this wonderful little internet invention became popular, and suddenly all the advertisers were jumping onto the internet, and it killed so many print publications, and even the ones that remain tended to drop their prices down to rock bottom. And so I transitioned into becoming a copywriter. When I moved back and was living looking after grandma, I studied direct response copywriting, which is writing to sell, writing to persuade people to take action, and it's marketing writing. It's marketing. It's about making one way of describing copywriting is a salesmanship in print. So it's marketing writing. and I have quite a strategic mind, so that got me into marketing strategy. And then in 2018, as I was coming toward the end of my time homeless, I was able to, I turned it into a marketing agency. For the first couple of years, I had the marketing agency's name, and it was registered and everything, but it was still just me doing everything. I just had a more formal front. Now I actually do have a small little team, and but initially the first couple of years, and it's only been since the end of last year that we've really taken on this NDIS focus and focus on helping NDIS providers attract and convert and keep participants, which in the NDIS space are called participants. So
yeah, I understand. So yeah, that because they changed the laws just recently, and they cut down a little bit on the NDIS funding, so they've had to tighten the strings a little.
Well, part of the work I do each week is I read my content writer's blog posts, and I learn so much about the NDIS and all the changes from what she writes. That's where I'm getting all my information these days.
Mm-hmm.
So I read what she's written and stuff like that, because I've got to read it to approve it. And it's like, oh, they've changed that. That's really interesting. I didn't know that. So yeah.
I was going to say, so because people were rorting the system, so it makes it harder. It's the competition's harder, and it makes sense that you have to help companies to get their name out there.
So look, there's a couple of things there. Anytime that there's a lot of money on offer, you are going to have people step in and try to rort the system and find a way to get that money. If people know you have money, they want it. So people, if there's money on offer, people are always going to come along and try and get their hands in it. And then, but the other thing too is back in like 2022, so over COVID, one of my clients offered me a full-time. They're an NDIS provider. They offered me a full-time job as their marketing manager, and I came in and I was their marketing manager. They're still a client today. But I finished up as an employee for them. But over COVID, with that uncertainty, I took on the job as marketing manager. I could do it remotely, and I could really do it in the hours that suited me, because occasionally I'll have a sleepless night because of the bipolar. And so the best thing for me to do is, I can tell whether it's better for me to stay in bed because I'll eventually fall asleep, or whether it's better for me to get up and do work until I am tired enough to go to sleep. And so they, and so I did this marketing plan, and part of that I did market research into the NDIS sector back then. The projections were that that I did it in 2022. The projections were that by 2025, pretty much anybody who can be on the NDIS will be on the NDIS by now, which suddenly makes it like it was easy when there were new participants being added to the NDIS all the time because they needed providers. But we're now at a market saturation point where, and essentially it is a commodity because the prices are set by the government. You can't charge above a certain price, and you obviously and so it is a tough industry. And when it's when there were so many new participants coming into the system, it's easy enough just to put your hand up and go, hey, I'm a provider, and people would find you. Now you've actually got to focus on real marketing and identifying what makes you different, like what makes you different from all of the other NDIS providers that a person could choose. Why should they choose you? Why should they choose you now? And you need to have an answer to that question. If you're an NDIS provider and you do not have an answer to that question, I can guarantee you your marketing sucks and you're not going to be getting great results.
Exactly right. And so what made you realize that the NDIS market was for your business?
Well, I mean, so there are a couple of things there. One is, having bipolar disorder. I have, I've lived with bipolar disorder since 1996. I've been stable, like relatively stable. I haven't had a manic or like a major manic or depressive episode that's required hospitalization since 2001. But I do have the experience living with disability. I do have the experience of navigating the mental health system, of navigating supports, of learning to advocate for myself, of dealing with the stigma of having a mental disorder, mental illness, we say in this country. So I have that experience. So even though I don't have what the NDIS calls psychosocial disability, because when an NDIS uses the term psychosocial disability, they don't just mean that someone has a mental illness. What they mean specifically is that the mental illness impacts their day-to-day functioning to such a degree that they that they're not able to function without more support, like day-to-day sort of support. And I'm I'm too high functioning to have a psychosocial disability. So, but I do have the experience of disability. So that's one reason why. The other reason why is because I want to be doing, even as the marketing agency provides the funding that provides the basis for building out my charity, which I'm establishing toward ending homelessness. I still want to be doing things that make a positive change in people's lives. And so being able to help people with a disability have a better life through the work which I'm doing on a day-to-day basis is more inspiring. And I'm when I'm inspired to get out of bed in the morning, then I'll get out of bed in the morning. If I'm not doing things that don't inspire me, then I just really don't care. And I used to work for one of the big banks, like a long time ago. I used to work for one of the big banks, and I couldn't see any way that the work which I was doing was making an improvement in people's lives. I actually could, see that now, and I'd actually have I'd actually be able to see that a lot clearer now. But back then I couldn't see how it was making a positive impact in people's lives. Whereas with the NDIS, I'm picky about the clients that I work with, the NDIS providers that I work with, because I'm looking for people who have the same, share some of the same values, and share that that same desire to make a positive impact on people's lives, and not just be all about taking money without a fair exchange.
And so that's commendable. And I'll go on to the third question, because you've done well, brother. You've done really well. It's 55 minutes, and it's been very interesting listening to your story. And I thank you for being so frank and upfront about what you've been through. Um, and I can't imagine what it feels like to be have that diagnosis, and also what you've been through as a child. But what I was going to ask you was, you've sort of already answered this question, and that is basically, who's your ideal client? Who would you like to see help the most?
Yeah, I mean, with the NDIS marketing agency, it is it's essentially the catchphrase these days would be purpose driven NDIS providers, like NDIS providers that have a reason behind it. So one of my NDIS provider clients, they're a Christian organization, and they're also a charity. So what they don't rely on donations to fund their charitable projects. What they do is they take their profits from the NDIS work, and all their profits from the NDIS work go back into their community projects. That's the kind of NDIS client which I like. But in terms of my homelessness stuff specifically, I'm really looking for opportunities to speak and to share my story about being homeless, and my vision around being able to and the plans I have around ending homelessness and stuff, because I've really been nutting out some of the specifics about how to go about that, from on overcoming like the 7 to 10 systemic barriers that keep people homeless. One of them is fairly easy to fix, which is the lack of a fixed address. Like if you don't have a fixed address, then it's hard to get, and this is the same in so many other countries as well. But it's hard to get support from Centrelink, and that if you don't have an address where the people who most needs have the most difficulty getting the support, because in this case they don't have an address, and so that's probably the easiest thing to fix. But I'm looking for opportunities to speak about my story of being homeless, to speak about that vision, and also I'm looking for more writing opportunities to write about that. I'm happy to talk anywhere. I'm happy to also write anywhere about about the same things, and go into a bit more detail.
Very commendable, brother. Very commendable. So I'll go on to the my last question. So it's okay if you don't have an answer to this one, but what ideas or information would you give to provide lifelong longevity?
Well, okay. So because that's definitely a bit of a flavor at the moment, like it's a bit of a thing. There's a lot of focus there. I started learning about this space back in mid 2000, like about 2006, I think it was. But the biggest, most impactful thing you can do toward increasing your longevity is spending 45 minutes a day exercising. That's from what's his name, Peter Diamandis. His book, The Longevity Guidebook, I think it's called. He says quite there. The in the old days, they used to say 30 minutes, 6 days a week. But in terms of longevity, they say a minimum of 45 minutes every day. I've found that, like so Stephen Covey, who wrote 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, talks about having, habit 7 is sharpen the saw, which is about renewal, and it's about, and this is where the longevity habit fits into, but it's about making sure you're taking time to recharge in the 4 key domains of life, which are the physical, the mental, the social, emotional, and the spiritual, or more simply, the body, mind, heart, and soul. I personally defined those roles for myself as athlete, lover, genius, and sage, and that's how I see them myself. And so, by shifting that focus in that role to athlete, I've actually, I set a goal. I've been training to beat my time in Adelaide's 12-kilometer city to bay. So 12 kilometers is a half marathon. I've been training to do that. I've had to pause my training for the last 2 weeks, which really sucks because I've got an ingrown toenail of all things, which has gotten infected, and uh, so yeah. But but seeing myself an athlete, it's really led to I've lost 10 kilos in that in a month as a result of that focus on the nutrition side of things. Um, and the thing is, we really have best this age we live in today. We really got to be grateful for this age we live in. So my running and nutrition coach, I use Gemini AI, and so I have Gemini AI is live connected to the internet. It's also it's Google, so it's connected to Google Scholar, and I use it for check-in. I check in each. So I do the 5-kilometer park runs. I got my little park run band, so I don't have to carry my phone on the run. And that's my official time. I use that as my official time each week because they time it and it's uploaded to their website. But yeah, so with Gemini, I check in. Once a week on a Saturday, I say this is my park run time. This is what my weight is today, and this is how my training went over the past week. And then I get from Gemini, I get specific coaching around what to do to what to focus on over the coming week, how to shift my training, to keep moving forward and keep working toward that goal.
Wow. Wow, that was pretty good. So thank you so much, Daniel G. Taylor, for coming on to the Get Busy Living podcast. We've gone over time. We've gone way over time. So it's been very interesting talking to you. And because you didn't bag me much, I'm going to give you access to my bronze membership to my health club. So there it is there. It's www.sixsenseacupuncture.com.au/health club. We didn't get any comments, so I can't offer them the audience the same deal. But there you go. There, just use the code, free access, and just go to the website. It's worth $11. You get access for 1 month, and I teach you about EFT, emotional freedom technique. I teach you about meditation, nutrition, exercise. I teach you about planning it, and also other things. So there's 5 modules, and there's over 60 lessons. So yeah, you get that for free for 30 days, brother. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that. And I just want to say that anybody who is watching this, I do have I did create a special little report based on a book drawing from a book I'm writing and talk I've given, which is it's the 7 immutable laws of overcoming tough times. So these are the laws which I learned to escape homelessness, but they really apply in any tough situation or adversity. I specifically focused it on entrepreneurs and mental health challenges, but really it does apply to any kind of tough time. And so if people want to get that, they can just either DM me on any platform. I'm Daniel G. Taylor on everything, or they just go to my website and drop something in the contact form.
There it is there. DanielGTaylor.com.
Thank you. There we go.
All right.
Well, thank you so much, Scott. Really appreciate you. I really appreciate what you're doing. And yeah, you have an amazing rest of your day. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Daniel. And yeah, we had a few problems with the Wi-Fi, but we got there eventually. So thanks very much, everyone. Been watching the Get Busy Living podcast with the wonderful Daniel G. Taylor. You have a great day, guys.